Crowds have been a big part of our society for many years, especially recently, it seems, when diverse opinions have generated large groups of people taking to the streets, demanding social justice, or up the Capitol steps to stop the steal, which courts across America have determined didn't happen. That has not kept millions of people from embracing and believing things that aren't true. COVID vaccines, another example where groups have dug in with one belief or another. Dr. Stephen Nelson is instructional associate professor of sociology at the University of Houston, who studies social psychology and deviance. Dr. Nelson, thank you for joining me this morning. There are millions of people in our country who apparently believe unprovable and unproven things. You say that people seem to be ready to do so. Why is that?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Kimberly. I share your frustration with that, but it is a very human thing to believe all sorts of things. We're just, frankly, not very good at determining truth from fiction as individual human beings. You know, even when we really want to do it right, we fall prey to all sorts of biases and logical fallacies and errors and superstitions. So we are prone to believe things that aren't so, particularly if it's in our social benefit to do so.
And you say social benefit. What do you mean by that?
If we are in groups where the other people in the group believe those things too, we can get social status, we can get that sense of belonging and identity by believing things, whether they're true or not. So it can really be in our advantage. Sometimes it's in our political advantage or our social advantage or our economic advantage to do that too. It's called motivated reasoning.
There are plenty of sources of information out there where we can find facts, but it seems like over the last number of years, various groups, they seem adamant about information that's spurious at best. What's the challenge with when groups are faced with trying to find the truth? It's a lot more challenging for them to do so.
Well, it is challenging to do so. Again, as individuals, we're pretty hit and miss. That's why we, as a culture, as a society, have developed a whole number of institutions to do this very thing. You know, we have the criminal justice system and courts when we want to determine whether somebody committed the crime or not. And that means a whole bunch of rules of evidence and other rules and laws that and training that go along with that. And that's certainly the way it is in science, right? We have scientific method, and we have years and years of training, and we have peer review. So those institutions step in and help us, and individually, myself included, we're pretty bad at determining the truth. But when we get together in one of these institutions, we're much more likely to get it right.
So, and I remember one of the advisors on the previous administration talked about alternative facts, which doesn't exist. But there's so much information playing in all of this. Talk about the fact that we've lost the institutions that have provided the legitimacy through the years. It seems that we've lost a lot of that.
Well, there's a perception that we have. I agree. A lot of people have lost trust in those very important social institutions. Those institutions have been criticized in many ways legitimately from people who want to better those institutions, but also from people who really cynically and politically want to undermine those institutions, like historically the tobacco lobby and the fossil fuels industry have attacked science, not because they thought science was wrong, but because they knew they could lose money if people believed the things that science was saying. So that's a real problem. And then we end up with someone like Donald Trump, who really made it a core part of his politics to attack and undermine all of those sort of core institutions of truth. So people, particularly people who are Republicans, just don't trust those institutions as much as they used to.
So it seems to be that there are a lot of people who cross the political aisle in various different groups, and we have different groups who just don't believe each other, even though they may see facts right in their face. What are the dangers of seeing a continuation of this kind of groupthink, when all these large groups are believing in something, even when facts indicate that what they're, quote, believing in doesn't exist?
Well, it's incredibly dangerous. I mean, the only thing that keeps us as a society is this idea called social solidarity. It means that we see things the same way. We have shared experiences and shared values and shared vision on what we're here doing. And when that falls apart, we no longer have a society. We have multiple societies, and that means we have arguments that we don't need to have. It means it's much harder to solve some of the really important social problems, global climate change for one, and it can lead to violence, honestly, as we saw on January 6th.
So as an eternal optimist, always looking forward to the best possible answer, is there a way to get us back on track, get all our groups and societies, or those different divergent groups on same pace, or at least in a place where we can be more harmonious as opposed to more adversarial?
Well, I certainly hope so. But it does seem like a heavy lift. I mean, the main issues are this lack of trust in institutions and our breaking apart, essentially. I think we have to find ways to rehabilitate these institutions. And that means bringing people who have developed distrust in them together to rebuild them, to reconstruct them in ways that we can all start to trust again.
Wow.
I would hope that media can be a part of that and can bring us together more in it seems as though many times in media we get brought together to fight. It's more like blood sport and watching a football game rather than being brought together where the goal is to communicate and solve problems. And it would be wonderful if we could get brought together and in shared goals like that.
From your mouth to God's ears, and to an eternal optimist talking to an eternal optimist. Dr. Nelson, thank you so much. Thank you again also for sticking around. We're going to do a little extra conversation because this deserves a little bit more talk, so let's do that. But thank you. Hopefully we've been able to help people find a place of reality in our positions and attitudes so that we can have some respectful dialogue about the way forward.